Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beyond the Arc podcast. Once again, I'm here with my co-host Yash. Yash, appreciate you coming on. We're gonna do a little bit of film breakdown, like we did on our last episode when we were taking a look at the Timberwolves Lakers game, Game One. That series since then, they just finished Game Three. Wolves up 2-1. Go Wolves. Um,
Big time win for them. Yeah.
yeah, and the winner of that series is gonna play the winner of the series that we're gonna look or partially look at today with the Houston Rockets and Golden State Warriors. You see Yash's shirt,
Come on, man.
the
Come
town.
on, baby. Dub Nation.
Yeah. And then also we're gonna look at some clips from Franz Wagner. Had a 32-point game. I thought his game was pretty, indicative of showing what his strengths are at the same time. What his limitations are as well at this point in time, and playing against the Celtics in the playoffs, like that's it's gonna really highlight your strengths and weaknesses, and props to Franz for 32 points. He had a really overall strong outing, but obviously still a young player, a lot of room to grow. But yeah, let's get into it, Yash. So what are we looking at in regards to this Warriors Houston game?
Yeah, so let's talk about a general overview first. The Warriors ended up winning this game 104 to 93. And again, this was without Jimmy Butler. So there are question marks on, how could they really score? How could they defend? And they answered both of those questions. So overall, they scored 110.8 points per possession on the game, which was actually their highest of the series to this point. So they're able to answer the questions offensively. Diving into more detail about their offense, they only had a 10.8 turnover percentage, which is the lowest of the series. And they also shot 81% at the rim. A lot of those were driven by their ability to attack 4-on-3 situations, which we'll dive into the film here real quick. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the Warriors held Houston to 100 points per possession, which is a bottom 10 percentile. Houston actually had a game where they scored worse. Again, holding an opponent to those kind of shooting like productivity defensively is always a good sign.
Yeah, I was watching that one. More I wasn't watching super closely for the I guess for the film perspective. I was just watching with my roommate and my friend, and kind of enjoying the game. And yeah, Steph Curry, he just had some nuts shot making. Like one thing I was saying to them was like, I just like cannot believe at the level of talent on this Warriors team, like what they're able to do. And obviously, it starts with what Steph Curry does in terms of generating two on the ball all the time, and we're going to look at these 4-on-3 scenarios. But with Steph and Draymond's genius on the defensive and even offensively too, just overall, despite the lack of just two-way talent, I mean, you just look at the roster. There's not that many players that you would say excel on both ends of the court. Maybe you have a Buddy Hield or a Gary Payton who excels offensive, defensively, and then even if you look at the most versatile players like Pajemski or Moses Moody, any other names that come to mind that I'm not thinking on?
Pajemski,
Like
Moody,
more like two-way ish guys, because to me Pajemski and Moody are like, they're good. I think they're competent at least somewhat on both ends. Even you can argue Moody on offense is not the greatest, but they're both still pretty limited, I would say as well. And despite that, you're taking Steph Curry and Draymond were able to take a team with Quinton Post, starting the game. Like what playoff team would have Quinton level post player starting? But I think the Warriors system, the way they play, and how their coach really allows the strengths to really shine, and they just make it work somehow, despite just not having the best. You just look on paper, you're like, I don't know about this team, and then they figure it out.
well, man, it's a team with Steph Curry and Draymond Green, as you said. They always figure it out. And yeah, like you said, the ability to the Rockets put two on the ball on Steph Curry, and even a couple of the other guards most of the game. And as we talked about earlier, the crux of the game was going to come down to how the Warriors attack those 4-on-3 situations. So let's dive into some film on that.
Yeah. Yeah, as you're pulling that up, Josh, so you said we're talking about two on the ball, and the Warriors are putting two on the ball. This is making me think of when Ime Udoka last coached against Curry in the playoffs when it was Boston Golden State, because the whole thing with that series, if you remember, was that the Boston originally I think they had two on the ball, and then they switched to just playing a one on one, right? Um, they just played Curry one on one, pick and roll, try to contain, which that totally makes sense. Like make Curry be the scorer, and then he did it, and then won them the series. It's like what do you even do against this guy? Like, I think you just think of that because usually most teams the problem they run into, even for like LeBron at this stage in his career, is like you play LeBron one on one, you try to make him a score, and that's what you do. But you can't do either against Curry. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. By the way, I
Yeah.
see that Curry picture on the corner of your room on the wall. Is that a picture of Curry? Is that a drawing? Did you get that in like an art class? You drew that in art class or something?
I did, yeah, I did. I'm actually proud of that one. I had to hang that one up, but I appreciate you pointing that out, man. Yeah, give the viewers, Steph Curry's not just a shooter. I'm not just a basketball mind. I'm also an artist off the court. So, yeah, let's highlight that.
Didn't you just tell me the other day that that was like one of the hardest classes you took in
It
college?
was, man. Yeah, that was a struggle. I'm telling you, man. Like, I put my all into that class and still didn't get the grade I wanted. Sometimes that's just how things go.
Man, why they grade Art 101 so hard?
That's what I'm
Let,
saying.
let the guy get his general education course.
And let me cook, man. Let me cook. They didn't let me cook.
All
Yeah.
right, take a look at this. Full
Okay.
screen it if you
Yeah, yeah, I
can.
got you. Um, okay, so where should we start? So, as we talked about, so this is starting in the first quarter. I hand tracked the Warriors' points per possession on each of their 4-on-3 situations by quarter. So in the first quarter, the
Jeez.
Warriors actually struggled. They only had six possessions where they put two on the ball, and they only scored 0.83 points per possession, which is well below league average in terms of half
Of
court offense.
27 from the field
And
coming into this
a
game.
major
3 of
key to
20
that was
from 3 in this
Houston
series
taking
before he
away the
knocked that
rim
down.
and giving up.
Yosh, you gotta turn the volume down.
Oh, is the volume? Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
I muted the site. Okay. Yeah. So again, Warriors scored 0.83 points per possession in the first quarter on these two on the ball situations, and a huge key to that was Houston taking away the rim and the paint with rotations and funneling shots to less efficient outcomes. So as we see here, two on the ball with Şengün in like a high drop slash hedge, and Vliet's helping off the corner here, but it's off Draymond Green, and that takes away the angle to the paint and gives up a look that Houston's willing to give up.
Yeah. Wait, go back really quick. Can we go to this play?
Yes.
What do you think about this a lot? So go to like when Pajemski's a little bit deeper.
Okay.
A little
Right.
bit. Yeah, like right maybe yeah, like right there's fine. I don't know. I feel like Jonathan Kuminga should cut right there. I think that's an easy lob, and Green and Sengun are focused on the ball. Brooks is splitting two on one. You have a legitimately good shooter in post,
Hmm.
and then I feel like Kuminga could do a cut there, and then Brooks goes with Kuminga, throw it to post, vice versa. I will say I don't know if this was intentional or not, like if the what Houston's coverage was, but you're forcing Pajemski to pass right, so maybe he's not really comfortable making that right hand skip pass on the move. So he's not going to see that. So he's probably going to make it a little bit of easier pass. But still, Kuminga I think should still cut there.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good
yeah.
eye. Good point. Yeah, totally. Let's take a look at this next play here. So now this is with Curry. This is like a full blitz, forcing him to pick up the ball. They get the ball to short again. Again, I think the first point here is the spacing. You see Draymond here before even setting the screen. He's telling post to get to space here instead of crowding the area of the action. Ultimately, Steph gives it up to post. There's no advantage created with Houston scrambling back into play, but it's a little bit of Houston's activity plus the Warriors spacing not being ideal. But again, the Warriors, this is a key. Even when there wasn't an advantage created initially, they just get right to another action here. Van Vliet sticks with Steph. Little pin down frees up Pajemski, and he knocks down a three. Let's take a look at this play. This time with Şengün, two on the ball. Steph beats him. And again, this is the key we talked about before, where Van Vliet's sitting in the paint, funneling the shot towards Draymond Green in the corner, which is what they want, versus a Steph Curry layup. This is loading for me right now, but that was the general outcome. Again, we see another example here. Two on the ball. Houston's taking away that paint, forcing the ball. Again, ideally, it's not Pajemski in the corner. He's a good enough shooter, but they take that over a Steph layup. So overall, that was the general outcome. Like Houston did a great job of taking away the paint on these rotations, being active and early. Like I think this is maybe this play right here. I'll go full screen. This play right here is maybe the best example where Steph beats Şengün. Brooks is right here meeting him outside the paint. You have Jalen Green here following the help, making sure that he's the low man, and then a 2-on-1. Moody's able to make the cut off the 2-on-1, but again, this is an inefficient shot, a contested floater. So that was the general theme to me, where Houston was taking away the rim, funneling the Warriors to less efficient shots, and the Warriors also were trying to figure out their spacing. And so again, overall, this ended up in 5 points in 6 possessions, or 0.83 points per possession in the first quarter. And then in the second quarter, I think that's where the Warriors started breaking away. It actually initially started out the same way it did in the first quarter, where the Warriors had some trouble. Here, this is with Gary Payton screening, which is a different coverage for Houston. It's a switch, but ultimately, with Van Vliet or whoever is guarding the point of attack and trying to switch, oftentimes they were late to get under the switch, and so it ended up being like a 2 on the ball situation anyway. But again, even in these kind of situations, the Warriors had some trouble figuring it out. So we saw there, Gary Payton could have gotten out on the roll earlier, be available to be a target for the pocket pass. Here, this kind of spacing is wonky. As we see here, Looney catches it on the short roll, but then you have Quentin post in the dunker spot, Gary Payton rolling or cutting as well. And this is a 4-on-3. Again, notice Houston taking away the paint, willing to give up 3-point shots, and ultimately the activity pays off. But then ultimately in the second, there was a point in time again. So like the start of the second quarter was similar to the first quarter, where the Warriors couldn't get anything going. But then the Warriors called timeout midway through the second quarter, or like the 6:34 mark, down 12, and then they started shifting some things up with their process that made it a lot easier to attack these 4-on-3s. So this is their first play out of the timeout, 6:07 mark. Again, you see down 13. So they go to a ram pick and roll, which is screen the screener. So you know that post is coming up to screen, and so just to free up the trap, and knowing that Adams is going to come up on the screen, Podziemski's going to screen Adam first. So now he's a bit behind the action. Ideally, he wants to be at the level of the screen. And since he's late getting up top, Steph is able to split, get inside, and lay it up.
Yeah, that's something Houston was actually doing to the Warriors last game when, they would have a screener come up. They would also do that same exact play, set a ram screen for. I remember there was one in Kevon Looney where Jalen Green had the ball and Jalen Green was just able to easy split because Kevon Looney was so late to get to the level. So yeah, it's a good tactic.
For sure. It's a chess match here, both teams, as we've seen throughout the series. Let's see what happens here. This play, they meet Steph early here, force him to give it up. You see Steven Adams' activity to get back. So here, like, there's no advantage. Is there anything you want to say, Matthew?
No, I was just gonna say, can you, instead of like scrubbing it, just like let it play to the next point, because it just looks really clunky when you scrub it. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So watching that back again, the trap meets Steph at half court. Adams is able to scramble, and the Warriors are at no advantage. But then this is the adjustment that we saw even in one of the plays in the first quarter, where even if there's no advantage, you can cycle it back to another action, especially with Steph. That always creates good things. So as we just saw here, they try to load dribble handoff. Houston switches it, but Thompson gets on Draymond's high side, and as a result, gives Draymond the driving lane, creates the offensive rebound, and then Steph's able to knock down this three. We're not able to see it in this clip, but he knocks that down. So again, another counter is even if you don't get an advantage, just get to another action and trust that it works out. Here, similar result. Podziemski up here real quick. So yeah, as you saw here, 2 on the ball. We play it again. Pods isn't able to make this read down to post, but no worries. He gets it to Buddy Hield to get to an action with Steph screening for him, and he's able to knock down a 3.
Yeah, it's just, I think, the randomness, right? The randomness to their action. Their spacing alignments are always different every time, it feels like. Which is a good and bad thing, because there's sometimes where they are a little bit disorganized, but sometimes that disorganization leads to defensive breakdowns because you're not giving the defense the same reads over and over again. That's just the one thing I noticed with the Warriors. I just feel like their spacing and overall organization on the floor sometimes they're just a bit all over, which works in their favor. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but I think that's by design.
Yeah, and that's a great point, honestly, because watching this film back, I was trying to find a theme with their spacing, trying to see if there's one particular alignment that the Warriors tend to go to over another. But as you said, it felt like it was random. So um, absolutely, it was it didn't really feel like a factor. So we go here. This next play. Okay, so let me play it out. So
Yeah,
here
just
the
let it
Warriors
run.
go to a short action. So basically, rewinding it back, at the point of the screen, Steph is going to make this escape pass to an open player, usually on the wing. And then Pajemski has the opportunity to make a read here in this 4-on-3 on this backside. Ultimately, Draymond cuts, gets inside for an and one. Another two on the ball situation with Şengün. This was a play that Houston defended well.
What a pass from post right there.
Let's see it again.
Be bad pass and then.
Oh, yeah. And then, yeah, this is not the shot you want from Buddy Hield either. Non-advantage three.
How
But
much time was
again,
in the shot clock when he shot that?
yeah, it was 11 on the shot clock.
Oh,
So
no, it was a dead or whatever. There was no shot clock.
no,
Oh, no,
right
it was 11. What the heck? Okay.
here. Exactly. I mean, it was an up and down game for Buddy Hield, but he had big shots that counted. But again, that was maybe one of the few plays in the back half of the second quarter that Houston defended well in the second half. For the most part, it felt like the Warriors had their number, and you're going to see here Şengün's up at the level. Steph just attacks him, draws a foul, gets free throws. So the overall theme of in this second quarter was again the Rockets initially started out to take away the rim and force the Warriors into bad shots. But then the Warriors had some counters, again, the Ram pick and roll that we talked about. And when they didn't get an advantage, just swinging it and getting to another action. And just it felt like they had a more clear plan of the
Wait,
attack.
yeah. Could you go back to this hedge really quick or this coverage?
Yes.
Just want to look at something. Yeah, just let it play through. Just pause here a little bit before. So, what would you say maybe like the problem with Sengun's hedge in this play? Is he late? Is he just too slow? I know Curry does a good job of like drawing the defense out,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
I mean, you're still going to the sideline though, but yeah, I guess what would you say is kind of the problem here?
Yeah, I think ultimately the goal of every hedge should be for most teams, it's to instead of allowing the ball handler to get downhill, it's for them to move laterally and allow the point of attack defender to get back into play. So you want to almost stick with them moving horizontally, just long enough to where, like in this situation, Van Vliet can get back in front. So in this case, like Şengün is just, I think he's just a touch late getting to the spot. Like that's why Steph is trying to get downhill. If Şengün was maybe a half foot, um, you know, to the left, really cutting Steph off, maybe that could look a little different. Steph also does a good job of selling the contact here. But I think it's just a matter of Şengün being a step late. Like I think he's got to be in a stance a little quicker, be up to touch a little quicker, and that would have let him cut off the stride versus giving Steph the angle.
Yeah, yeah. So I asked that because that reminds me of a clip I saw from I don't know if you've been watching the new Mind the Game with Steve Nash and LeBron.
Mhm.
I don't know. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
So there's a clip in the most recent episode where they're talking about the difference between playoff regular season and like the attention to detail and the playoffs. But one thing they were talking about, or that Steve Nash, I believe that he said, usually when you get to the playoffs, or when you talk about adjustments, right? Like adjustments are not usually like kind of changing your scheme. You go from a drop to a hedge, or hedge to a trap, or like that's not really sometimes that is the adjustment. That's usually a little bit more drastic. Usually the adjustment, instead of you being like here in this spot, like where Sengun was a tad late, get here, you're early. He's so it's more of those like kind of minute adjustments. So I would be curious to see what the Rockets are going to do next game, because if you think about it, like I don't really know what else they're going to go to guard these two on or put two on the ball situations. Like what do you do? Do you just execute the hedge better? I'm very curious to see what their kind of next step is going to be, even if it may be just something minuscule in terms of just like positioning or something.
Right. Yeah, and you make a great point. It's all about the little things, and I think there are some things that Houston can change because I do think that the hedge with Şengün was problematic. Again, I also hand tracked how many times Şengün got beat on the hedge, like we just saw in this past play, and I counted like 6 or 7 times where Steph was able to get downhill, beating Şengün in this hedge. So getting by him versus funneling him to a side. So I think one countered is like what the Warriors did with Quentin Post. Instead of like Quentin Post had a lot of trouble defending Jalen Green in ball screens, and so in game two, and so in game three the Warriors put him on Amen Thompson instead of Şengün, and so now he's being involved in actions less, and obviously Amen Thompson is a different level of threat compared to Şengün on the roll, so that makes Quentin Post's job a little easier when he's defending in his drop coverage. And so I feel like the Rockets could do something similar with Şengün, either put him on a different matchup or pre-switch him so that he's not involved in as many actions. I think there's some things that they
Yeah,
can figure out.
I do want to say though, I feel like Sengun wasn't on post most of the game. He was on Moses Moody was in the game. He was on Moses Moody. I'm
Yes,
trying
you're
also,
right.
yeah,
But I will say the Warriors, it felt like they were just going at whoever Şengün was, or they're screening with whoever Şengün was guarding. It did feel like
yeah.
that.
But if you have it with he's on Moody, it's the whole. Sorry, this is the example I think of from the I think is it a couple 2 years ago when or 3 years ago when the Warrior it was between Dallas and Golden State when the Warriors made that adjustment at halftime from having Curry on Reggie Bullock to Curry on Dorian Finney-Smith. What a
Yeah,
callback! Because I
yeah.
remember we talked about that at some point,
Should
or maybe saw a video
I
on it.
even wrote about this.
Who did?
Great call.
But yeah, so it's the idea that you put the person that the defense was the target on a different player, so then you bring that player as a screener up who might have a different skill set or might not be as good in the role. So if you think about it in the starting lineup, maybe that's put Sengun on Jonathan Kuminga, which I think they did. I think they did that because Moody didn't start. So I guess emphasizing that more because obviously in that play he's guarding post. I don't know if it was like transition or some weird situation where he ended up
It was,
as
it
the
was the
ball
end of the
screen,
game,
but.
half court end of the game, like clock.
Okay. Yes, I think putting him on Moody, Kaminga, I think would be a good
Yeah,
option.
totally.
I don't know. I don't know who else because both those guys, I don't even know if they closed. So it's like in that lineup where it's Curry, Pajemski, Jimmy Butler's going to be back.
Yeah. Stuff. You got decision makers all across the floor.
Yeah, I don't really know. And within that starting lineup, who do you play if you're the Rockets? Like who are
Yeah.
you putting? Who are you putting on? Sengun on
Yeah.
matching up.
Yeah, I think that's a question they're gonna have to answer, and maybe that's a tricky question. And I think they could also just do a better job, like of getting Şengün out of the action when possible. Like if Şengün's guy is going up to screen, just whoever's the nearest guy, they should go and take the screener instead, which is pre-switching. At least trying to limit as often as
Yeah.
Şengün is involved in these actions. That could be an option.
Yeah, but I feel like the pre-switching. I feel like teams have figured out that counter pretty well. Like they just kind of everyone kind of knows like what they're doing now, so they'll cycle the guy out and then bring Sengun's guy. But then you're taking a little bit more time off the shot clock, but you're still getting Sengun in action ultimately.
Right.
Um,
And again, maybe again, like it's all tic-tac-toe because maybe the Rockets could add ball pressure, slow the Warriors down a little bit, and then now the Warriors are working late clock and forcing to bring multiple bodies into actions. I think every little thing where you're even if you're making the defense think twice or run a couple more actions or take a few more seconds in the clock, all of that can ultimately be
yeah,
valuable. So yeah,
yeah,
good stuff.
yeah. I think that's kind of what the Warriors' secret sauce is. Like they're able to adjust so well on the fly. I feel like and really because they've seen the Curry and Draymond, they've seen it all, and Steve Kerr as well, and that kind of I feel like rubs off on everyone else where they're able to kind of understand the reasoning behind these why these certain adjustments are made. They're not like if for example if we're talking about pre-switching, like they're not just going to set the screen because like that's the play. They understand okay, there's a pre-switch. I'm going to get out of there. We'll bring the guy up that we actually want to target. I feel like they have like a good understanding of that and how to teach that as well.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. And just really quick, because we want to address what happened in the second half, and we don't need to go through every single play like I did in the first half. I'll just go over a couple of the plays that talk about, and then give the picture of what happened. So let me share my screen again. But again, as we talked about in the first half, the first quarter, the Rockets had a lot of success in the 4-on-3s, 0.83 points per possession for the Warriors. Second quarter, that went up to 1.4 points per possession. And the third and fourth quarter was the same story 1.3 points per possession and 1.7 points per possession, respectively, on these 4-on-3 situations. And I think a major reason for that, first and foremost, was I thought Houston's activity just wasn't the same. Again, we saw the main key to the first half to their success in this coverage was taking away the paint, right? But we see on this play here, Quinn Post gets in the short roll. We do have Dylan Brooks step up, but then Jalen Green, it's hard to see, but Jalen Green, who's in the corner, isn't cracking down on Draymond Green, and that results in a wide
Dude, that, he
open.
is not even close to cracking down.
Again, he's not even
What?
starting a shooter. He's on Jonathan Kuminga in the corner.
Like what? That is a complete just like brain fart. Like what the heck? Why are you so close to Kaminga when the ball's on the other side of the floor?
Exactly. Right. And
That's crazy.
that. And
What are you doing?
that's what you say. And then let me see if I can find this other play. Okay, yes. And again, another key that we saw with the Warriors that we also saw in the first half was even when Houston defended the ball screen well in 4-on-3 situations, they just cycled it right back to Steph Curry or cycled it right back to another action. So starting this play again from the top, Draymond Green slips the roll. Houston's able to rotate and recover back. And then Dre looks to get to Steph once right back to him. And Steph's able to cut back door past Dylan Brooks, who's top blocking, and he's able to swing to Moses Moody for a three.
You gotta be like pretty much perfect on defense when you're guarding the Warriors. Like that's like how do you even guard that?
Right. And again, like it's one thing. It's you're right. It's the Warriors, but it's also just hard as a general principle to defend multiple actions. That's why
Yeah.
coaches say all the time, put the defense in multiple actions, force them to defend multiple actions, and that's what we saw here.
Yeah, and most teams, honestly, in the NBA level are pretty terrible at this, I feel like. Or a lot of the teams I watch, I'm like, it is just one action and it kind of devolves into isolation. But yeah, the Warriors just kind of continuously move and move and move.
Right.
So hard to guard.
Yes. And obviously, can't go without mentioning Gary Payton's impact in these situations, especially, which sort of brings it all together. So we see here GP2 on this initial screen, they aren't able to create an advantage. But as we talked about, they go right back to Steph Curry. He slips, gets inside, finishes. And I think he had a couple plays like that. This is the let's see if this is the yeah, this one was the cherry on top where again Houston, it was a mix of Houston just not being set and the Warriors getting to actions, being decisive in the paint. As we see right there, GP2 is just able to strut right into the paint and finish.
Yeah, that small ball lineup really killed Houston when you had GP2 at the kind of or slotting him in, no Kaminga. You also got Buddy Hield on the floor.
Yes.
Because on that line, you actually have good shooting because you're having Buddy Hield off the ball. Pajemski can like shoot it at a reasonable level.
Yes.
And then Gary Payton's great in the short roll. And obviously, you don't want Draymond in that position. You put Gary Payton, and he can make plays like this where he can finish, but I also think as a passer, not perfect. Like I think there were some plays where, maybe he could have made a pass that wasn't there. He just, wasn't prepared.
Mhm.
But overall, I think he really thrives in that short role. And he had a really big game yesterday. And look at the lead, 85-84, and what the Warriors won by double digits. So this small ball lineup really did a lot of damage last night.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said it perfectly. And just to wrap things up, like the overall theme of these 4-on-3 situations was, first of all, with Houston, I feel like their activity got progressively worse throughout the game as the Warriors continued to attack them and stuck with their process. And I thought the Warriors also cleaned some things up. Like we saw them have some creative solutions, like with the ram ball screens. And also, it was just being patient. Like if they didn't create an advantage initially, cycling it back to another advantage until the defense broke. So I thought those were the biggest keys with that.
Cool. Yeah. Is that all you got on the Warriors game?
Yeah, I think the
Okay.
4-on-3 situations, that was the biggest thing.
Yeah, definitely. And we were talking about that last night. I'm right. I texted you. I was like, well, we both were in agreement that, yeah, that is kind of what we need to look at. Because it was first, second half, there was just such a big difference in terms of how they were executing in those situations. And, like, it just felt in the second half. Like, there's sometimes in 4-on-3 situations where, like, you can just feel the defense is just, like, there's so much space on the court. You just see it. Like, you could tell, like, Houston wasn't able to kind of muck things up at all. Like, it was just simple reads by the end of the game, and the Warriors kind of figured it out. Yeah, I guess if you're Houston, like where do you go from here, right? Because like they just beat you without Jimmy Butler. Now they're going to bring back Jimmy Butler. So instead of having Gary Payton in that short role. You might have like a Jimmy Butler. You have Jimmy Butler off the like. What's your adjustment? Um, I guess moving forward.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like as a young team, it's important that your confidence isn't getting swayed too much by one loss. Like it's like it's again like the Warriors. This was their highest scoring game of the series. The first two games, Houston did a great job limiting their productivity. So Houston just needs to trust that they have what it takes defensively, especially to stop this team. And we saw it for stretches. Like in the first quarter, Houston was great. Like they're taking away the rim, forcing the Warriors into tougher passes and into worse outcomes. So I think the first and foremost, Houston just has to make sure that they maintain that same level of activity across 48 minutes heading into Game Four. And then from there, trying to make it easier on your weak points. So as we talked about, there's some things you can do with Shingun to keep him out of the action, or put him in a situation where he's guarding a less effective threat. And then um, yeah, I mean, I think honestly that might be it because I felt like the Rockets didn't execute as well as they could have, and maybe the real adjustment is just trying to make it easier on Shingun, Adams, their bigs.
Maybe the adjustment is like if you have a Gary Payton in the short role. Who else do they have besides Gary Payton?
Yeah, so the screeners they had Gary Payton, Quentin Post, Moses Moody, and of course Draymond Green.
Okay. I the one thing that comes to mind right now, I don't know how it works, is somehow make that short rule guy the scorer, right? Because I think the Warriors are best when they're able to get you in that cycle, when they're able to kind of pass out of those short rules. But like, I mean, Gary Payton did score off those short, like you saw that finish there. Obviously, not giving up an uncontested layup, but like understand like if Gary Payton Jr. takes a you know non-paint or non-rim two-pointer in the paint, I think that's kind of what you're gonna have to give up, like that floater, like Draymond's floater too. I think you're as a defense, you're fine with giving that up. Even Quentin Post, while for a 7-footer rookie, he is really great actually in playing in space. I would rather have Quentin Post take those floaters than let them kind of spray out from that point. So that's the and Moses Moody, same thing as well. I don't really know if I could trust. I trust his touch enough around that area, to punish the defense enough, hitting those types of shots. So that's what comes to mind in terms of executing that. I mean, maybe if you're that big, you just like really just like kind of just sit at the rim and just make that guy take that floater above you. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think maybe even taking a step further back, maybe it's just a matter of making sure your bigs are around the paint in the first place. Because as we saw in other coverages, for the most part, like their bigs are on the perimeter. And so if you're able to keep your bigs in the paint on those actions, then then you can have them play cat and mouse and force the Warriors into those floaters. Because right now, like you're having like Jalen Green, as we saw, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks make decisions as low man. It gets a lot harder to just cover enough ground to defend two players down low the way they're currently operating. So maybe they can figure out ways to keep like Adam Shingun in the paint and force the Warriors into those floaters.
Yeah, but even like Amen Thompson, I feel like could defend the rim well enough.
Jabari
He's a
Smith.
different. Yeah. I mean, I think there may be different types of rim protectors where they want to fly in and block your shot versus like they're not really great probably from like a standstill just because they're a little bit smaller. Um, but yeah, let's see if they do that. If we do, we could say you heard it here first. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
all right, we could take a look now at kind of a whole different game. Um, we're gonna look at Franz Wagner, 32-point game as the um, Magic defeated the Boston Celtics in Game Three. Um, you know, I kind of expected that one to be a sweep, but they picked up a game. Franz Wagner had a big one, so just want to take a look at that because I think this game really exemplified the type of player he is in terms of not only his strengths but also where he kind of needs to improve to take that next step. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this.
Hmm.
Yeah, so these are just kind of plays that kind of piqued my interest in terms of, offensive, maybe even a little bit of. I don't think as many defensive clips because they just did a lot of switching with him. But that's a something, he at 6'10, he's able to switch on the bigs and also guard Jason Tatum, Jalen Brown, be that primary matchup. Um, so yeah, here a little floppy action. just blatant miscommunication. Jumper's a bit slow. That's kind of what I'm. It's a little funky. You can't. There's some better angles we're gonna see in a second. Um, but from like a kind of side angle, but yeah, comes off floppy, hits that three.
That's
Um,
interesting. It's kind of like it's a little slow once he gets to the set point. He kind of lets it hang there
yeah,
without extending.
yeah. I mean, this is kind of Franz Wagner's game, right? You're gonna attack. Kind of one jab go. He likes this like kind of fall away, going to his left but shoot with his right, able to draw the foul against a pretty good defender in Jalen Brown. This at 6 for 10, being able to handle the ball like that, make that kind of hit ahead pass, and then clean up the finish. Um, you know, while he makes it look easy, not a lot of players in the NBA that has this type of skill set where they can push the ball at this speed, make this pass one handed on the move, and then kind of clean things up. Yeah, he gets the switch here. Derek White gets downhill, draws two, makes the right read. So, yeah, shot didn't fall, but that was obviously the right play, and
Yeah.
that's what he's good at. He's good at making those. If especially when he attacks quickly and able to draw two, he's able to make those reads pretty well.
Yes. Sorry, if you could go back to that last play.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think the big key here too is uh, like a lot of players, like we talked about Jonathan Kuminga in the last game. Like you see how Franz Wagner is able to just stop his momentum, play off 2 feet there. Like that's a big key to that play. Again, being able to draw two, play off 2 feet, and then find the fill behind. Like that's an important play. It's a simple play, but a lot of players can't really make that.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So Wendell's coming up, setting that ball screen. Yeah, that's a tough shot. I mean, he does, this is kind of his shot though. Like we saw, he already did this with the Jalen Brown, but um, while he does make that shot, kind of lefty pink shot with his momentum going the opposite way. If that's kind of your go-to shot in the pick and roll, not my favorite look, if I'm being honest. Um, yeah, has a switch here against not Gary Payton, Payton Pritchard. Attacks off the ghost. Once again, plays off two, able to make that kick out. Yeah, see it one more time.
Balance, make the simple play.
Yep. And that's what he does. When he makes very simple plays like this, it looks great. I like this vertical, great kind of rim protection moment there for him. Pushes the ball other way. Law. That's a big play at the end of the first quarter right there. And once again, I think that's kind of what's intriguing about him, right? He can protect the rim at a reasonable level with his length, take the ball up the court, has great vision and passing ability to make a lob at just like that.
For sure. Double drag.
Yeah, pops, tacks, one more, and then gets Porzingis here.
Nice.
Little step through move.
Beautiful.
So you see a theme, right? When he's making decisions quickly, playing off 2 feet, he has good footwork, step through. Good things are happening for him.
Mm-hmm.
He had 32 points and 8 assists this game to one turnover. Didn't only shot 40% from the field. Offense is still a work in progress, but the Magic are not necessarily known for their spacing and offense. So this play, it's very subtle, but this kind of shows his feel for the game, right? So playing through Paolo here, kind of isolating on the wing. Look what he's doing here. So he starts at the wing or wing slot, kind of sits that flare screen, right? Doesn't immediately lead to a shot, but by him doing that, because Derek White, he stays with Franz because Franz is a legitimate threat. You can't leave him. He causes a bit of a miscommunication where Jalen Brown doesn't really know what's going, doesn't see his man, gets the flare, and then you're causing a 2-on-1 on the backside, leading to an open three, which also does not go in because the Magic are not a good shooting team. But
And again, this flare screen, it's not like a play was drawn up there. That's just Franz, like you said, his feel, reading the play, reading the defense, and then making that play for his teammates.
yeah, so good little flare screen right there caused that miscommunication. So Celtics in the zone look here, kind of finds a little soft spot in defense, patience, kick out, swing, and Corey Joseph, Warriors legend. Yeah. Side note, our Corey Joseph, he's been starting at point guard for the Magic, and he's done some good things, especially on defensively. He does get switched onto the Jalen Brown, for example, and he'll force some difficult shots. Obviously, very limited, but he's done some good stuff. Here we go. Yeah, just another really tough floater, but that's kind of his go-to shot, which is interesting. Gets Derek White a little bit smaller. Just bank shot floater over the top.
Yes.
Bit of a tougher look, but it goes in.
Helps to be 6'10", again. Like that's
It
the
does.
advantages.
Get that 3-4 pick and roll
Nice.
drive.
Yes.
That's a tough shot. Um,
See that again.
but yeah, when you have a guy who can hit that type of look, So yeah, the one thing the Celtics did was have Al Horford, Cornette, just bigger players usually on Wagner, just because he's not a great 3-point shooter. You just see how much space that Cornette's giving him. But Franz doesn't let that kind of, bother him. Kind of works his way down into the paint, attacks this gap right here. Um, so let me know your thoughts on this, Yash. But Franz does have a tendency to kind of take these like one-legged, like he'll play off two in some situations, but he tries to sneak past Cornette with a little like inside hand 1 foot finish right here. Not my favorite shot in the world, and he does have a tendency to take these. Maybe you'd like to see him play off two there and make that a little bit of a higher percentage shot, or at least draw a foul or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I haven't watched enough personally to know if that's a trend. Like here, he's driving to his left. Maybe he opts to finish off one more often going that way. Who knows? But in that circumstance, definitely with Cornette on his trail, he could have definitely played off 2 feet. Got to another look there.
Corey just got shifted there.
Not a good look for our guy Kojo.
It's funny too, just looking at the difference between this offense and then the Warriors. It's pretty funny. That's what people say, like, oh, everyone plays the same way. Like, no, they don't.
No.
No, they don't.
Mm.
Watch the Orlando Magic play. I don't blame them for not watching the Orlando Magic. I don't remember. Maybe I accidentally clipped this, but I'm trying to remember if was there anything significant off this? Doesn't look like it. Paulo drive, rim protection, plays off one. Oh, here it was. Yeah, you see what I mean? This was for the jumper. Look at that hitch. Yeah, that doesn't look right.
Mm-mm. The energy transfer doesn't seem smooth at all.
Yeah. All right, now we're in the second half. So you see Orlando's down 10 right now, and they ended up winning this game. Good short roll pass.
Again, that's
Sees over the top.
Yes, like you said, 6'10". That's one of the another strength.
All right, he's in the corner right here. Paulo drives. Corner three, attacks it, and then doesn't get but still a good pass. Like the way he kind of wins this closeout. Don't know why Al Horford's biting here. I mean, his jumper's so slow sometimes, like, you think it's so slow, oh, I'm just going to get there and contest the shot, because that's how he shoots, but kind of works in his favor there and creates this opportunity for a dunk.
Yeah, that was a great pass, too, because Horford, if pass wasn't placed properly, maybe Horford could have peeled and stolen the ball there.
Yeah. Yeah, look, gets all in the paint, floater over the top. It's a good touch. Doesn't settle, right? He doesn't settle he gets as far as he can to get that little flip shot up and still being aggressive at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Now that's a stampede cut, right?
A little Fresno cut here, a little Zion cut.
Fresno?
Yeah, just like the crow cut.
Yeah. So kind of guys in the gap, just beats him over the top. Yeah, I mean, what do you think he can maybe do on this finish to make this a little bit better? I guess.
Yeah, I think he can really get into Tatum's body here. Like he has momentum. Tatum's off balance. Maybe a power dribble into Tatum's body, and then getting on balance, finishing off 2 feet. Maybe that could have helped there because he's off balance and he didn't really create separation off Tatum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good cut and recognition.
Yeah, spatial awareness as they call it.
I like this relocation right here.
Play
hits that jumper. So yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting concept, right? I think this is a design play, right?
Yeah,
it's got to be.
From what my eye right here, this feels like a shallow cut to me that teams have started doing recently. Where a shallow cut is basically where the player so right here, right, the action is going towards the right wing, and so it makes sense to free up that gap so Cole Anthony can drive into it. So the easiest way to do that is if you just vacate that space. So a shallow cut is basically where you vacate a gap and cut under the action to the other side. So as you see here, like Wagner cuts under the action, frees up that space for Anthony to drive into, and then gets to the other side. So that one that creates the gap, and if the defense lingers like Brown does here, it creates miscommunication and frees up the player cutting.
Yeah, good pass. Good shot as well. Yeah, Jalen Brown just completely freezes there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Magic up 8 at this point in the game.
Mm.
Some Cole Anthony.
Bag word, Cole.
Yeah,
Great
foul,
cut.
but
Ooh.
yeah. I don't know. So cutting's like right. I think the traditional way cutting, or just like the way basketball is taught, it's like, oh, you don't want to cut in someone's way, right? Um, but I feel like we've seen in these clips, and then also with the Warriors, at the NBA level, and hopefully this starts trickling down. Sometimes you want. I mean, I don't know if this was the best cut in the world, but he was able to kind of get the ball on the move here. Cole Anthony. I mean, it doesn't really look like Cole Anthony to me had a great step or anything on Pritchard. What was he going to do from that point? Like a step back jumper. So kind of like that cut, gets a step and draws the foul, even though looks like he got blocked.
Yeah,
But
I'd say yeah, that's a great point. And just to extend that conversation, I think there's a couple of different situations where you can cut. One is right here, where I feel like all Franz is reading is Jalen Brown, and so the second that he doesn't have his eyes on him, he just reads that and cuts back door. And there's other situations where you read the space, like we saw with Franz, where the play before on that curl cut, where he just read the space and he just cut to get into that space. And a similar situation is like a follow the help cut, where if that we see that the Warriors do all the time, where Draymond gets their short roll, and then the player steps up, and then Draymond's able to throw a lob. That lob is going to a player that's following the help, a cut baseline. So I think there are a couple of different situations where you can cut, and to the point of like cutting into space, I definitely or cutting into each other to get into someone's way. I definitely think that principle applies. It's just in the NBA with the level of athleticism and size, length, sometimes you can get away with that. Like you have Franz Wagner who's 6'10" and has what 7 foot plus wingspan. Most of the time, if he's able to get into the paint with a minor advantage, he's going to be able to finish. Whereas maybe if this was at the college level or the high school level, it would be a lot different. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, this was not the best sequence from Franz Wagner. Not a great shot, even though late shot clock creating isolation. But yeah, just can't really generate a good shot, even though it's a good defender Jason Tatum. Then gets kind of blown by at the end. Gives what they want. So not the best sequence there. But it kind of encapsulates not the best shot creator at this moment in time. And then defensively, while has length and is decent movement for his size, can't get blown by the best of the best. Um,
Yeah. And I think
so
the
that was
in
it.
the clips that we've seen here where he struggled, I think physicality has been the point. Like we saw on the cut that he couldn't finish over Tatum. If he had taken a power dribble, he could have finished that. And then even on that bump midi, it felt like he was thrown off balance by the contact. It feels like he's not really the enforcer in some of these situations physically. Maybe that's an adjustment he can make, and if not, maybe that's the next step for him to be more of an enforcer in terms of physicality and create those looks, create separation, and you know, make things easier for himself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can. I think we can wrap up here. Any last thoughts on Warriors, Magic, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, if we do you think we have a couple minutes to go over some more clips about something else related to the Warriors game?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, sure. I'll take the floor here then again. But Jonathan Kuminga he's been one of the biggest stories just across the playoffs in general, namely just him not getting minutes.
I don't know. I can't imagine him though once Jimmy Butler comes back, unless Jimmy's like on a minute restriction or something. I don't really envision him getting back into that rotation. I feel like he is a little bit too much of a weak point in terms of like feel for the game, and Rockets probably would be able to take advantage of him not always knowing where to go in offense, and just not kind of grasping what the Warriors are trying to do. But at the same time, like he's so talented, and like he's just another guy who can really score and create and get downhill, and the Warriors just don't have that. Like even Curry, I mean Curry will do that, but Jonathan Kuminga does it in a different way where he can do it. Doesn't always need a ball screen. He can kind of just go and figure stuff out. So
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's the crux of it. Like, because like you said, the coming back, tying it back to the 4 point about scoring in four on threes. his athleticism is a big part of that. Like he's oftentimes the baseline cutter that's getting downhill, and he's able to score in the paint. And in the sequences where the Warriors couldn't score in those 4-on-3s, a lot of the time it was because they had non-threats in the dunker spot in those situations where he's normally cutting and they couldn't score. So if he's able to put together sequences where he's playing more in control in the paint, I think that's the biggest thing. Um, Actually, I think I have. I think I can pull up one clip really quick, showing an example of him playing decisive in the paint. Let me see if I can find that real quick. I saw it drop.
Yeah, I agree. The idea of like what Kaminga brings on the floor is definitely very intriguing for the Warriors. I just don't think, unfortunately, at this point, he's doing that at a consistent enough level.
Right. Yes. Give it one last try. If not, then it's all good. Okay. So yeah, I have one clip here. I'll show real quick. So I think the biggest things are with Kaminga and his like the what's going to determine whether he can play or not is if he's being decisive in the paint and if he's being patient. I think that's the biggest thing. So as we see in this play right here, he gets a favorable matchup in
Into the
Fed Van
corner,
Vliet.
Kaminga was
Volume.
Yeah, sorry about that. So we see in this play here, he gets a mismatch against Fred Van Vliet. You'd think usually in these kind of mismatch situations, Kuminga has the advantage. He's going to get to the basket every time. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Kuminga tends to settle sometimes for either a mid-range jumper or tries to draw a foul, which is why his post-ups aren't really efficient. But in this case here, he really forces the issue against Van Vliet, gets all the way to the rim and finishes. Again, it feels like a simple play, but it's not something he makes all the time. So I think, again, the key is for him to be decisive here. Again, play off 2 feet, which really helps. He had a couple passes playing off 2 feet too in this game. I think that's ultimately going to be what determines if he can play or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. Like I think the reason why Jimmy Butler is so helpful because he does the same thing, obviously at a much higher level, but he also can kind of play that quick style play where he's getting out the ball quick and creating once he gets into the paint. But it's just valuable, especially as they get deeper into the playoffs, to have Butler and maybe even Kuminga, if he can figure it out, who can kind of let Curry take possessions off, and so he doesn't have to keep working on offense every single time. Like sometimes you can just throw it into Butler and Kuminga late shot clock and have them create instead of it being Curry. And I think in the long run, if they really do want to win a championship this year, I think Butler obviously can have to play at a really high level. Kuminga as well, because Kuminga just can do things that no one else in the Warriors can do. Even Butler, like Kuminga's a way better finisher in terms of like getting dunks and than Butler. Butler just does it in a different way. But yeah, I think just with him not playing in the playoffs this year, that if you're just kind of bringing this big picture, like what does this mean in terms of his contract extension? Is he going to be on the Warriors next year? Who's gonna kind of second draft take a chance on this guy? Because he's clearly, talented player, 6'7", athletic, has some flashes of perimeter skills, but it hasn't all come together yet.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's why the next however long the Warriors go, it's also just as important for Kuminga to make his presence felt. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I think we could wrap it up here. You can catch this episode on Spotify as well as YouTube or any other podcasting platform. Highly recommend to watch this one on video just because, we're showing film, so probably want to watch that instead of listening. So, thank you everyone for listening. We'll have some more playoff content underway.